This week, we got a division foe. We're going to learn all about them next. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And it's behind enemy lines. And I got my guy, Bo, with me. He is on the Arizona beat. So normally we do just a regular content creator from the other team, but we actually got somebody that is on the beat. They are in the locker room. This man knows a lot about the team. Bo, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I really appreciate your time.
Jesse, thanks for having me. Excited to break down this game. It feels like we got too many days before this one. We got an extra day. We're going to have a full Sunday of football, and then Monday night, it's on in Mexico City.
Absolutely. And you know what? The Thursday night thing worked perfect because normally I do this on Wednesday night, but the fact that the game's on Monday, it just makes sense to do it on Thursday. So I'm glad that you couldn't do it Wednesday and Thursday worked better for you, man. Well, let's just jump right into it. Arizona Cardinals have had an interesting season, to say the least. You guys missed Hopkins for the first 6 games. Glad he's back, by the way. That's one of my favorite players in the league. I don't care if he plays for a rival or not. I really like watching Hopkins play football, but you guys have had an up and down season. You know, Cliff is usually a guy that his teams start really hot and then they fizzle out. And this year he's been all over the place. Has the season gone the way that you thought it would have gone up to this point?
No, I mean, things were kind of looking like what you expected without DeAndre Hopkins. Those first 6 games, you thought, hey, could they sneak through 3-3, 2-4? They fall short of that just before he comes back against Seattle. Everybody thought, Seattle's not for real. They're frauds. And then Seattle held them out of the end zone the entire game, just kind of beat their ass up in that game. And then DeAndre comes back on a short week, Thursday Night Football, and looks, way better than anybody expected for somebody that had been out for as long as he had been. He had he had a hamstring injury last year. He had a knee injury, and then he had this 6-game suspension due to a PED violation. So it had been a long time since we'd saw Nuke play football, and he looked exactly like the guy we last saw. He's an elite wide receiver, commanding the football, getting a ton of targets. But as far as, they got right back into that offensive just slump right the next week against Minnesota, a couple turnovers. And, it took this team getting right against the bad or down Los Angeles Rams team last week with their backup quarterback. So, no, things have not gone according to plan, even though there's been so much kind of a lot of storylines surrounding this team off the field that you gotta think that are impacting this team on the field.
So do you think that the whole Hard Knocks in season thing is having an impact on him?
I don't think necessarily Hard Knocks. I think it's just, this is a team that is run by Cliff Kingsbury, who's very player friendly, and it's having a tough time as far as, accountability. There's a lot of penalties outside of last game. 12 penalties last time they matched up with Seattle at home. Self-inflicted penalties as far as offensive jumps. 8 pre-snap penalties on the offensive side of the football in your home stadium. I mean, that's just inexcusable. And then, once Zach Ertz is officially placed on the IR, he's the 77th player that this team has used this season, which is absolutely absurd. I'm not going to use that as a crutch. I mean, every team deals with injuries, but it's been a revolving door. DeAndre Hopkins landed on the injury report today with a hamstring, but I think we're going to revert back to the old days where DeAndre Hopkins doesn't miss games. This is not something that's going to require surgery. He'll probably be out there Monday night, but yeah, it's been mix of injuries and other things that have really cost this team an opportunity in a down NFC, in a division that has underperformed, to kind of stay in the mix. They've got to really make up some ground here in the next couple of weeks, and it starts Monday potentially, but they're big time dogs.
Yeah, they definitely are, but it's a division game. You never know what's going to happen. What's it looking like for the quarterbacks? It sounds like Kyler's a no-go. And then all of a sudden, Colt McCoy was injured. Who do you think's
Yeah.
going to start on Monday?
And I would say Kyler's probably about 50-50.
Oh, really?
And then
Okay.
Colt McCoy's got he's dealing with a knee injury, a little bit banged up. You would think that the 36-year-old it'd be tougher to get him more in line to start than, the 25-year-old that just got paid $230 million. So
Yeah.
it's just kind of, I think Kyler, if he's got a chance, he'll go Monday. Could potentially be the return of Hollywood Brown. I'm sure he's excited to get back out there with his buddy from Oklahoma, see what it looks like potentially with DeAndre Hopkins. But it's probably a coin flip at this point. If Kyler plays, I don't think there's any question that if he's healthy, they're going to go with Kyler instead of the guy that was the hot hand last week against LA. But Cliff Kingsbury told us this week he's pretty confident it's going to be one or the other. It's not going to be third stringer Trace McSorley.
Okay. Well, that's good. I do want to see a good game, and I wouldn't mind seeing McCoy play because the 49ers owe him one. The way that they beat the piss out of the Niners last year unexpectedly in that game, I'm sure the Niners would like that get back for sure. What's going on with Budda Baker?
Budda Baker missed practice again today. I mean, he's just sore. He's a guy that was supposed to miss 2 to 3 weeks with a high ankle sprain, and he just showed up out of nowhere on Friday. I mean, he was supposed to be down and be out. Cliff told us 0% last week, and he started and he played. He actually had a pick against John Wolford in that game on Sunday against the Rams. So Budda Baker, I would expect even if he misses practice, he's going to be in. He's going to be in there. We'll see about Byron Murphy, their top corner, but they played well in the defensive secondary without him last week. He's nursing with a back injury. And then this offensive line, Jesse, it was down, to one starter last week. And Colt McCoy getting that football out was what could really combat any issues that they had of having 4 or 5 non-starters in there. Just their right tackle, Kelvin Beachum, was their normal starter there. So it's really an interesting. It's going to be interesting how they kind of navigate these waters against the team in San Francisco that seems to be getting healthier and healthier.
Yeah, the 49ers are definitely looking up. There's no doubt about it. And it is hard to have empathy for a team going through a lot of injuries. The 49ers, as you know, the last few years have certainly dealt with their fair share of injuries. So I get it, and it sucks, but we have no sympathy or empathy over here in the 49er land for sure. What is the pulse of the fan base in Arizona? I know outside of Arizona, Cliff Kingsbury can be the butt of some jokes,
Sure.
And so I'm curious to see. I know he just got that massive extension. He's the one that brought in Kyler. That marriage, that's how that whole thing started. But what is the pulse like? What are fans thinking in Arizona? Do they like Cliff? Do they want him out? What is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's more of the latter. I think that this team can become frustrated with as much as they've invested in the offensive side of the football, including this handpicked quarterback who has been a success. He's been, as far as drafting a franchise quarterback, he's really the only successful guy that they've had outside of Jake Plummer in the late 90s. But to utilize a first round pick and hit, they've never done it since moving to Arizona. So, and then to be able to extend him and kind of celebrate that and then come out of the gates as flat as they have, the fan base is looking to point the finger at somebody and they don't want to do it to their franchise quarterback. Now, things kind of change within the last couple of days to watch the backup quarterback and Colt McCoy come in and run this offense is so efficient. And this team, be able to put up points unlike it's been able to do the previous 9 games. So things have kind of swayed a little bit, but, I don't think, another loss and people will be right back out there with their pitchforks, calling for Cliff Kingsbury. But he's a guy that signed an extension this offseason. So did general manager Steve Keim before Kyler got his extension. Cliff Kingsbury, if you look at the numbers, if you look at the numbers that are important, he handles the offensive side of the football. The Arizona Cardinals, they improved each and every year under Cliff Kingsbury offensively. They've improved in 2.5 or more wins each and every season under Cliff Kingsbury. So it's tough to deny that they haven't, improved each year under K2. But, I understand why people are skeptical. I mean, the guy went 35-40 in college, and you see, the issues in the game. It's always a heavily penalized team. It's been heavily penalized under Cliff. And then you look at the offense, that's his bread and butter. And sometimes the offense is the one that's kind of leading the charge as far as the struggles go. So very polarizing guy, no doubt about it. And I think he takes the brunt of the fans' frustrations, especially when you're looking at a 4-6 start.
One of the things that you talked about was Colt McCoy, and the most popular guy in the fan base is always the backup quarterback. We know this,
Exactly.
especially when they play well. So, but
Yeah.
with Kyler Murray, I have to talk about it because it is
Mhm.
a modern warfare launch weekend. I don't even play games, but that's what the kids are saying anyways. So he had this clause in his contract that they ended up ripping up because they took a lot of flack for it. And everybody has these stats whenever there's a launch
Yeah.
weekend of how Kyler plays versus he doesn't. Is that even talked about at all in the inner circles of the Cardinals? Is that even a real thing? Is it made up? Is it kind of a joke? Like from the outside looking in, I don't know what to make of it.
No, I mean, I think it was talked about so much, especially when went through an entire off season's worth of should they pay him or should they, let him ride out his rookie contract, which was this year, and then the option year next year. Yeah, I mean that was brought up on a daily basis. So now, 4 years in, the short chokes, you've heard them all, and then the Call of Duty stuff, you've heard them all as well. But I don't think that's an issue. It's definitely something that isn't brought up as much. Like it's interesting, like you see Jalen Ramsey in the commercial, right? Nobody says anything about Jalen Ramsey. Like the Phoenix Suns have DeAndre Ayton, who admittedly said, he stays up and plays video games until 3 and 4 in the morning, and nobody cares about that on a game day. But Kyler takes all this flack for it. But also, he's a professional gamer. Like he's signed with FaZe Clan, and he makes money. It's not just a hobby. As far as like the addendum that was put in his contract. I mean, I think that was more, let's look at like, is there an issue as far as preparation? It's not like a video game. Is there an issue
Yeah.
as far as, is he preparing like he should? And if you did watch Hard Knocks, I saw a question in your chat, how are you enjoying Hard Knocks? It was incredible to see on last night's episode, the second episode of the season for the Cardinals, Colt McCoy's preparation. And it's next level. And you can romanticize about what you want your quarterback to be. Not everybody's going to be Russell Wilson, but you want him to be prepared each and every week. And you hope that, Kyler is handling it. It seems like he says all the right things, but, that I don't think that the Cardinals were just trying to sneak that in for no reason. It's not nothing.
What do you make of some of the drama that it's not even a Hard Knocks thing is what's crazy. The actual just game day film is catching this. These guys are getting in arguments on the
Yeah.
sidelines. You had the Hopkins and Kyler thing. I actually didn't think that was that big of a deal,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
the
I thought Hard
the
Knocks
Cliff
shed
thing
some
was
light. It's
interesting
like,
too. Yeah.
yeah, it's I think it with that Cliff one. I mean, the team was struggling. It was, and I think you could obviously handle those situations a little bit better. But I talk to players all the time. I talk to guys who used to play the game, and those are pretty common occurrences. They just happen to be caught on camera. And then to kind of see that it was DeAndre Hopkins saying, "Hey, what were you seeing there? I'm open." I mean, that's every top wide receiver in the league. They have those moments. So it's just tough. It's people probably don't pay that much attention to it if you're 6-4 and not 4-6.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also think that the Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray situation was kind of a prelude, and so now everybody's looking for every little thing, and so the D
Yeah.
Hop thing kind of blew up too.
I'll say their relationship, the coach and quarterback. I mean, they know. I mean, Cliff knows he's tied to Kyler, right? I mean, his success is dependent on Kyler Murray's, and if Kyler Murray ever walks out the door of that building, likely he's going to follow in some capacity. And then Kyler knows that he's got it pretty well made with Cliff Kingsbury. I think he likes how he runs it. Like I said, he's a very player friendly guy, a very Kyler Murray friendly guy. He runs his operation and lets Kyler kind of do what he wants to do, and probably to a fault, right? Maybe Kyler needs a little bit more structure, but I think Kyler Murray knows that he can kind of go at his own pace with Cliff there. So I don't think there's that much frustration to where he would ever say like he doesn't respect him or he wants him out of there.
Do you feel like Cliff has a good command of the locker room? I know that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Over in San Francisco, we talk about this a lot. Some people are in on Shanahan, some people are out. He's not the most charismatic guy. I'll say that. I don't know how Cliff is. I thought he was pretty funny in the draft thing where he's sitting in his mansion and,
Right.
life's
Right.
good and whatever. But do you think he has good command of that locker room?
I think he's got the respect of the guys. I think that the guys like how he runs his operation. I don't know if command is the way to put it, right? I mean, you can watch in Hard Knocks, and he's got a few one-liners and stuff, but he's not controlling a room, right?
Yeah.
He's not saying profound things that are inspiring these guys. He expects these guys to be professionals and to kind of find their own motivation. Now, that doesn't mean that he's not saying things to individual players or saying things in the locker room or on the sideline, but he's not going to be he's never going to be Belichick, and I think he probably is kind of cut from a similar cloth as far as how he talks to players as Shanahan. Like he's never going to blow you away with what he's saying to those guys. You're not going to say, okay, that's the coach I want my players to be coached by.
Yeah, it's not going to be everybody's going to want to run through a brick wall for him
Right,
because he gave
right.
an early speech type of thing. I got it.
Exactly.
All right, let's talk about this week. And I always like to ask this because we as a fan base, we focus on the 49ers. And a lot of us know players around the league because of fantasy football and those types of things. But there's usually a player or two on every team that we just don't know or don't know a lot about. Maybe the world doesn't know a lot about. But this is somebody who is very impactful to the Arizona Cardinals' success. Give me a player or two that fits that bill.
Well, I mean, they just lost Ertz to IR, right? And or he's shortly going to be on the IR. He looks like he's going to have season-ending knee surgery. He was big. I mean, he led the team in receptions, and outside of the big names like DeAndre Hopkins and potentially Hollywood coming back. I mean, Rondale Moore is a guy that's emerging in the last 3 weeks, and people who play fantasy football are starting to notice that as well because the targets are going up, the receptions are going up, the yards are going up. Eno Benjamin was a guy that had a surprising release this week.
Yeah.
So he's not somebody. He was okay. I mean, he's a fringe backup guy. He went to a local university here, and I think people he's a fan favorite, and people maybe put too much stock into that to where he's a very replaceable type player on this roster. Maybe you have to look on the defensive side of the football, because the big names are the big names. I mean, all of them as far as the Cardinals go. Unless Trey McBride, the second-round rookie, the tight end that they drafted this past year, steps up from Zach Ertz, but so far very quiet as far as McBride's rookie season. Defensively, you got Watt, you got Buddha, those names, Murphy, if he can play. I'll say this, Antonio Hamilton had an absolute just amazing performance against Cooper Kupp. Before Cooper Kupp, he went out late in that game. Antonio Hamilton, he had 11 tackles, and you're like, uh-oh, your corner's got 10 tackles. It's like, no, he was making run-stopping plays, and he was shutting down Cooper Kupp, who I think had like -1 or -3 yards in that game on 3 catches. And that's the Triple Crown winner from the previous season.
That never happens.
Yeah. So Antonio Hamilton is a guy that was a journeyman. He had won a job outright in training camp and had a freak accident in his kitchen where he burned himself. So he missed the first 4 weeks, and he's been working his way back. But he's really emerged in this defensive secondary and played some really good ball. He's physical, and he can cover really well.
This is a really good question. Bo, what is the number one problem with the Cardinals this year?
Man, I think it's the self-inflicted penalties for the most part, because they have so much talent on the offense that they can make big plays, right? And they can move the football, but on first and second down, they're getting negative yards, whether it's a bad play call or it's somebody jumping before the play starts, and just heavily penalized and putting themselves in a hole first, second down, and then you're facing third and long, and you got to make a big play to even extend a drive, and that's just not happening this season. So I would say that's the biggest issue. I don't want to say injuries because we saw Colt McCoy navigate it at an offensive line with missing so many starters. So I think that it's definitely the penalties issues and the offense really underperforming because of that.
Absolutely. Since you are in the locker room, who's a player that you really enjoy covering?
Man, I mean, you got the guys that are. I mean, Hamilton, who I mentioned, is great at the podium and great in the locker room. He'll always give you good sound bites, and guys like JJ Watt are always great too. I mean, they seem to be as advertised. They're not just putting it on for the cameras. And guy like DJ Humphries, the left tackle, is always great. He's always, never kind of mincing words and always saying what, you can tell that he's a leader in that locker room and saying some things that kind of bring some levity to the locker room, right? When things are so serious, things are going not well, and he's able to kind of just have a couple quick one-liners that gets everybody back and back to neutral. So it's definitely between DeAndre Hopkins is also a colorful guy as far as how he talks to the media, and he's very he believes in himself, very confident in himself, but also he can break down the game with the best of them. And then like Isaiah Simmons is a guy who also played at Clemson, emerging star who's interesting to talk to as well. So they're not short on guys that leaders in that locker room and interesting guys to talk to, and you're not short on news with this team.
That's great. All right, getting into Monday's game, what's a matchup that you think the Cardinals should be most confident in this week?
Wow, most confident. Most confident matchup. I think they're DBs in Jimmy G. I think that's I think that they could probably get their hands on a ball. I'm not saying that they're just they've done very well against top receivers this year. Like as far as you play fantasy football, you look at top receivers, the Arizona Cardinals have done a great job in slowing those guys from DK Metcalf to like the Justin Jeffersons of the world, Devontae Adams. They all had pretty mediocre games against this defensive secondary. So I think more so against Jimmy G, they can do it. I'm thinking, I don't think they're going to win the lines of scrimmage. I think that still goes in the direction of San Francisco on both sides of the football. So I'll kind of stick with that for right now.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I think Jimmy's pretty liable to throw one up every once in a while. And
right.
he's get this, Bo, never in his career has he gone 3 straight games without a turnover. He tried earlier this year. He failed on the 3rd game. This, again, is a chance at it. This is his 3rd straight game if he can go through this game without a turnover. So I think just law of averages might be on
the
Cardinals side. Yeah, he's due. So we'll see how it goes for sure. I'll tell you a matchup that I'm really looking forward to, and I hope that we get to see a lot of it. Hopkins versus Charvarius Ward. I think that is a prime time matchup. I think we've seen the Buda Baker and Kittle one, which is always fun.
Right.
But man, something about Hopkins and Charvarius Ward, I just think that that's going to be such a fun one to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, DeAndre, after having kind of a down game the previous week, he had another big game last week. He's averaging 9 catches for 99 yards in his 4 games this season since being active. So yeah, he's the real deal. But then it's just like, if the attention is there, a guy like Rondale Moore has been stepping up and been making plays against the other corners in the opposing defense, and then Hollywood Brown potentially returning. I mean, that could be a game changer. So, I like the safeties and the linebackers matching up against the tight end, the running backs that you guys are going to run out there. I'm giving the edge. Obviously, the San Francisco, I think defensive coordinator Vance Joseph has to do a great job in slowing those guys down. Really, really always wanting to watch those matchups. Arizona Cardinals, unfortunately, now have to face Christian McCaffrey. They faced him in Carolina earlier this year 3 times potentially. I mean, that's just brutal.
That's no fun for anybody for sure. It's crazy though, because so the Rams played the Panthers, then they had their bye week, and then they played the 49ers with Christian McCaffrey. So they had to face him 2 weeks in a row essentially for them. That was kind of crazy too.
Yeah, and then I saw Elijah Mitchell was getting most of the carries at the end of the game against the Chargers, kind of salting that game away. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think a lot of people did make a big deal of that. My thought process going into this was always Christian McCaffrey's great because not only does he listen, Debo and Elijah Mitchell haven't been the most healthy guys. I mean, that's what it is. And Christian McCaffrey's had some injury concerns of his own for a couple seasons. Between the 3 of them, I think they overlap just enough to where they can really help each other out and staying fresh and prolonging each other's careers. So I think the 3 of them, the trio, is really, really interesting, and there's some good overlap there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a good tandem. I mean, with Mitchell looked fresh last week.
Yeah, so. he looks explosive, much more explosive than he did as a rookie. I think he was dealing with some injuries for sure. What is a matchup that you think the Cardinals should be least confident in?
Yeah, I mean, we saw Isaiah Simmons in week 1 of this season just get dominated by Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce showed you why he's going to be wearing our yellow jacket and our gold jacket in 5 years after he retires. But Isaiah Simmons, he's played a lot better ball recently, but the Arizona Cardinals have been kind of reverting back to where they were a couple years ago, to where tight ends have been an issue for them, and they had a streak of scoring touchdowns there for a while. So Kittle should be a big matchup, one that I don't think you're ever too confident in. And then those running backs going up against those linebackers. I think this defense is based on kind of creating negative plays on early, first and second down. But with that, they're willing to kind of give up maybe big gash plays on that, and sometimes that can lead to some big drives. So the linebackers and obviously their defensive line are going to have to be solid in slowing down those two backs. So there's a couple big offensive defensive matchups that the Cardinals are really going to have to show up for on Monday night in order for this thing to go, to kind of chip away at an 8-point spread. I mean, to not let things get out of hand.
Definitely. There's a linebacker that they drafted last year from Tulsa, I think, and I'm drawing a blank on his name. What's
Zaven Collins? Yeah,
Zaven Collins. He looked really good coming out of college. How's he been playing?
So last year he barely played. He played about 20% of the defensive snaps. Couldn't get it onto the field. Had a couple vets in front of him. Talented guy, big guy, athletic. And then training camp hit this year, and you didn't feel like between the years he was picking up the game as much, and he just needed to see the field to kind of get those reps. And he's been playing 100% of the snaps the last couple games. He's out there all the time. He's got the green dot. He's calling the defense. So he's slowly figuring it out. He's not Fred Warner, where he's his first rookie season where he's got over 120 tackles and a couple pass defense and all that stuff. He's kind of slowly getting it, but I think he's going to be a good player. I think he's a serviceable guy right now, and he can flash here and there. And then you'll see like a couple mistake plays where, running back, or I see in the chat, a big yak team. And sometimes he's one of the reasons for that. But sometimes he can really make some big plays for this defense. And I think, the more and more playing time he gets, the better he gets. And the better you can kind of see what they liked coming out of Tulsa, picking him 16th overall.
Yeah, definitely. Between him and Simmons, if they could just reach their potential, that would be a scary tandem for many years.
Simmons has been really good. He's had 3 game-changing plays. He had the win in overtime. He forced a fumble against Vegas. He had a pick 6 on Thursday Night Football, and then he had a big fumble, that strip sack against Kirk Cousins that should have changed the game, but the offense kind of stalled out. So he's changing a lot of games with his athleticism. So he's rebounded, but you never know. Like you're not 100% confident that those guys are going to be dialed in and where they need to be.
Yeah, I remember when he was drafted, it was like he was drafted specifically for George Kittle. Like that was the thing. But I think that they had him out of position. Like they tried their hand at safety with them, and then linebacker, and kind of had him all over the place. And it is nice to see that he's being successful though, because he also had a really good college career and was supposed to come in and be an impact player for sure. Jag, the status of Buddha is similar to what last week was. It sounds like probably a guy that's not going to practice, will show up for walkthroughs, and probably be a gamer and play. If you play on a high ankle sprain 6 days after you do it, that's just different right there. So unless the pain changed for him, I really doubt that he doesn't play. I mean, that guy. Right. Shout out to Buda Baker, man.
They said he's sore. He's just sore. He didn't practice today. Tomorrow. Yeah. I mean, that you should be. Exactly. Otherwise you're not human if that's the case. So yeah, I anticipate, that would have been a mistake if they let him play last week against a really bad Rams team. They probably could have won that game without Buda, but he's a gamer. He's going to force his way into the field. And I'll tell you, the status of Buda Baker is, it's up to him, and he's never going to take himself out. So, and he's going to be in there come Monday night. I fully believe that.
I love that. I love that throwback toughness for sure. Finish this sentence for me, Bo. Cardinals win if.
Cardinals win if the offense shows up like it did last week. If this offense can string together some drives, if they can get some They can put up some points, and I'm not talking touchdowns every drive, but if they can, come out of the gates in the first quarter, maybe play with a lead, and then find the end zone after maybe wearing the Niners down a little bit, cash in with all the playmakers that they have. If they get Hollywood back, how they can kind of see they've been envisioning with him and DeAndre Hopkins. I think that this offense has the firepower enough to play with the Niners and win. It just takes them, getting the lead. That seems to be big with Cliff Kingsbury in the squad, and just not, having too many lost series. Like if they string together 3 and outs, I mean, that's bad for this offense. They've got a decent defense, but you put them on the field too often, they wear down. And when you got the playmakers and the running back duo that the Niners have, that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, most certainly. Are the Cardinals a team that starts out quick in games, or no? They start out pretty slow and then
I think they've got like one first quarter touchdown. It was brutal. It was
okay.
so bad for the longest time. They barely even scored in the first quarter for like the first couple games in the season. So they've been terrible out of the gates. They really have. They've been mostly a second half team. So that's something that I think Colt McCoy was able to remedy a little bit. Kyler had some success on Thursday Night Football, but it's definitely comes down to avoiding the penalties and the self-inflicted stuff. They're not a team that turns the ball over that often, but they have not been a fast starting team. That's for sure.
That'll be an interesting matchup because the 49ers have been a little opposite defensively. The last couple of weeks, they've been giving up early touchdowns and early movement from offenses. It's been kind of shaky there. And then in the second half, they've just battened down the hatches and completely 2 weeks in a row shut teams out. So that'll be an interesting thing to see. If you got one team that's starting out slow and a defense that's giving up a lot early, and then you roll reverse in the second half. I'm very curious to actually see how this game plays out. That sounds really interesting to me.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's going to be key. I mean, I think that was the blueprint when they all had all this success early last year. They started out 7-0. They go 10-2. It was get an early lead, maybe win the takeaway battle, and then go into halftime with that lead and then build on it in the second half. And they were able to do that. They did that, kind of against the Niners in Trey Lance's first start. It was more of a defensive struggle. And then Colt takes over in Santa Clara last year. And that was the full blueprint was they were able to execute that perfectly in that game. So that's what they're going to look to do, no matter if it's Kyler or Colt under center in the shotgun.
Yeah, most definitely. All right, let's switch it up here. Cardinals lose if.
Yeah, I mean, if the offense comes out and it's stagnant and can't make plays, and if the Arizona Cardinals, lose that turnover battle, I think that this is a Niners team that can certainly take advantage of that and will and just grind you down and kind of just salt this thing away easily in the second half. It's something that could get ugly, pretty early just because of where these teams are health wise. So, it's going to be important to not make any big mistakes against the Niners for the Arizona Cardinals. And they played a pretty mistake-free game on Sunday against the Rams.
Yeah, definitely. I think ball control will probably be pretty important. It sounds like, you guys the Cardinals have a little bit of a smaller overall, I think, interior and linebacking core that can wear down, it sounds like. And so I think just maintaining the ball, I think Connor is going to be really important for the Cardinals. I think that'll be a big part of it. Is he a type of guy that has been getting like 20 plus carries a week? What's he been playing like?
He was kind of injured for the middle of the season. Like he came out of the gates, they were down, so they couldn't get the run game going. So he was kind of a non-factor. Then he injured his ribs and he was out there for a while. Now he's back. He played 96% of the snaps last week, which is unheard of. I mean, a guy who's played no more than 14 games in a season before. So it's not ideal. They've got a rookie backup now because they got rid of Benjamin and Keontae Ingram, who played at USC, who's decent. He's got good size, good speed. He'll probably be the backup, and then they might elevate somebody from the practice squad to return kicks and be their third string running back. But yeah, it's the James Conner show. And, if it's Colt McCoy, I mean, those two were kind of the two guys that were so dangerous against San Francisco last year.
Yeah, they were. Oh my gosh.
And then big screenplay that Connor took to the house. And then in close, it seems like James Conner's money in the bank. So he's had a slow start to the season. Certainly not going to reach like 18 total touchdowns like he did last year. But I think the team is like, okay, he's healthy. We paid him a lot of money in the offseason. We're going to lean on him. So I expect him to be a big part of the game plan.
It's funny because going into this game, both teams have taken completely different approaches. The Cardinals have stayed at home to practice, it sounds like.
Hmm.
Mexico City has extremely high elevation, higher than Colorado even. And the 49ers chose to go out to Colorado to get
Yeah.
used to the elevation, but they're dealing with a ton of snow and elements, which is interesting there because they're not going to be playing in it. And so
Right.
I think both teams have chosen different paths, but possibly have hindered themselves a little bit with the weather thing for the 49ers, and then not acclimating, I think, is interesting. And I also think it's interesting for the Cardinals. I don't prefer this as a fan of the NFL. I don't think I don't like that teams have to give up a home game to travel
Mhm.
abroad. I
Yeah.
hate that because what's going to happen here, and as a 49er fan, I love this week, right? But what's going to happen is you're going to have like an 80-20 split for 49er fans,
Hmm.
and it's supposed to be a home game for the Cardinals. It's one thing if a fan base travels really well like the 49ers do against the Rams and just take over a stadium. That's there's nothing you can do about that. But to lose a home game by playing at a
Yeah.
neutral site, that's tough, man. That's really tough.
Yeah. It's a bummer. I mean, I don't think that the team really kind of feels it because of the schedule. It increased one game last season,
Mhm.
and they'd started where they were going to have 9 road games last year, and they were such a great, away team last year, and they continue to be a decent away team, not as stellar as they were last year, but and then so they take away their 9th home game and they played in Mexico City, and they get, the team gets to host the Super Bowl, in February. So that's what they kind of had to give up this season. It's unfortunate, but they had so many struggles at State Farm Stadium, their home stadium, for so long. People are like, let's play a game anywhere but there. So maybe they're just more focused on the road. Maybe that's why they're treating it more like a home game, or I'm sorry, away game, to where they're not traveling. They're traveling a day early to get there, and
Smart.
yeah, we'll see what they. It was kind of strange to see that the Niners had decided to do it in the thinner air, and the Cardinals decided against it. So we'll see what strategy maybe paid off, and if it plays a factor come Monday night. And talking to DC Vance Joseph, who has a long time spent, he played ball at Colorado and then he coached at Denver, so he knows about it. And he says it's something that you really can't anticipate until the flow of the game starts. So they'll start
Mm.
seeing if they need to get more backups in there and have more of a rotation, or if they'll be fine and have their lungs in Mexico City on Monday night.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a real thing for sure. I mean, playing in elevation is not it's tough. It can be tough if you're not used to it. And that's why the Broncos for so many years have had advantages. I remember I think it was Ryan Clark for the Steelers couldn't even play out there because he
Hmm.
had sickle cell. And
Yeah.
so the thin air just he couldn't do it. He might die. It's crazy how much of an impact it has, and it's certainly an advantage. I don't know, like I know the 49ers are acclimating. I don't know how much like 3 days of practice is really gonna acclimate you, but I'm sure
JJ
it
Watt
can't
said
hurt,
like
I would
you
assume.
need 14 days.
Yeah.
So I mean, maybe they just figured it wasn't worth it. But I would
Yeah.
think that just getting any reps in it, and maybe they feel like the less than 24 hours that they'll be there, maybe they can acclimate and just kind of get out there and run around. I have no idea. But yeah, Watt said it's something like 14 days to really kind of get acclimated to it.
Yeah, interesting. All right, let's get down to the nitty-gritty here. What's your score prediction
And
to this game?
this is so early on this game, Monday night. I gotta give a score prediction Thursday, man. I mean, 8-point spread.
Well, how about this?
Yeah.
We'll be fair. We'll give you
Mhm.
2 chances at it because the quarterback play is different. So
Yeah.
let's go with a Kyler score prediction, and
Mhm.
then let's go with a Colt McCoy score
Yeah.
prediction.
I mean, this team has had one game where they've really played, how you expected them to play, how they want to play. They've been consistently inconsistent all year. So it's tough for me to say that they're going to go up against the Niners team that's won 2 in a row, and they seem to be trending in the right direction, and basically playing in front of a home crowd. I think that the Niners are going to come away with this game as far as what it's going to look like score wise. I think the Cardinals can certainly. I would take the points. I think 8 is pretty large, especially with what they can bring offensively with Kyler or without Kyler. We know that Colt McCoy has the ability to do that. So I think the Niners probably could win like 27-24. Hopefully it's a good game. I'm hoping to see two competitive teams. I really do think that the Cardinals, things break the right way and they can win the turnover battle and play mistake-free football can win this game. But I think realistically, the Niners are just trending in their better direction right now.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. But like I said, division games are always it's a
Yeah,
crapshoot. What look at the Eagles. They lost. It's funny because everybody piles on the Eagles like, oh, I knew they weren't any good.
right.
They got beat by the Commanders. And hold on, let's pump the brakes. We have to understand that division games, you almost can just throw everything out. You
Mhm.
really, truly never know. You look at a team like the Colts last year who were primed for the playoffs. All they had to do was go and beat the lonely Jacksonville Jaguars, and
Yeah.
they couldn't do it. These things happen in division. I kind of throw all of that out. And the Cardinals have really had the 49ers number the last couple
Yeah.
years. It's not like the 49ers are rolling and then they also own the Arizona Cardinals. That has not been the case. In fact,
Right.
the Cardinals have really started to own the 49ers here, and it regardless of injury, I mean, it sometimes just hasn't mattered. So I think I would not be shocked if Arizona kept this really close and maybe even eked it out. But for some reason, I've been picking every score this year super close within one score. I haven't figured out who the Niners are, but this game, I just have a feeling that this is the week that their offense finally does what it's capable of. Their defense has been very good already.
Mhm.
If their offense can finally just come out and put up points and do what we think they can do with 5 all-pro players, caliber players on that side of the ball, I think this is the game that they can win. Not huge, but big
Mhm.
enough. And so I'm gonna go with a score prediction of 27-16.
Okay. And that's
Yeah.
pretty, Cardinals have been playing kind of keeping it at one score this entire season. And that could get obviously as high as 8, and that's what the odds makers are putting in it. So that's pretty close. I think, obviously if the Cardinals are going to win, I think that it's got to be like I said, they get out early, right? And then they can play that brand of football that they like to play so much last year. As far as trying to come back on this Niners team, I think that they don't want to have to try to do that. It's just it's a fool's errand, and I think that it could go south, you know,
This
quickly.
this must be a Cardinals fan. That's funny. I don't know if you saw this, but I had a tweet that went pretty viral this week, and it came down to Trent Williams tipping plays. Um, Yeah, that whole thing's interesting. We'll see how it plays out. It's going to be funny because
So what
there's
is
a
he
lot of
tipping if he
people
was going into pass protection and or a run
everything,
play?
man. It's
Really?
everything. If it this was pointed by the way, this is not new. I guess Alex Rollins, who's a great content creator, I love Alex Rollins. He pointed this out last year. The a
Mhm.
Bears defender pointed it out this year, and all I did was reiterate it. I just said, "Hey, he's still tipping plays. He's got one stance for pass, one for run, but he doesn't disguise. It's very obvious." And so I think there's a certainly a mixed review on that whole thing. A lot of people disagree that it's a big deal, whatever. One thing I will say is everybody in 49er land will be paying attention to that left leg of Trent Williams this week. I guarantee it. And, we'll see how it plays out, if it makes any impact at all. But it is pretty funny. And I love that a Cardinals fan came in here and caught that. So kudos to you, my man.
Yeah, that's gonna
All right,
be
bro. Yeah.
yeah. Hopefully Vance Joseph is looking at Trent Williams tape right now and seeing how they can expose it. The problem is they don't have much off the edge. I mean,
Yeah.
JJ is kind of playing more inside.
Right.
So it's just like you're gonna be able to get a rookie third rounder to expose big Trent Williams. I don't care if he's tipping his play, he's still a big man and can play some football still. So yeah, it's gonna be a great matchup.
Yeah, I think the thing, my worry was it's like Trent Williams to me is like Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan in their prime, where when they turn their back to you in the post that they're gonna shoot a turnaround fadeaway, but you're not gonna stop
Yeah.
it. Trent Williams could literally come to the line and be like, "Hey, I'm gonna do this." Most likely, you're not gonna win, My
Right.
concern is like, oh my gosh, if it's getting out to everybody, what does that look like then? And
Exactly.
so, well, it seems like it hasn't had a big issue at all. Shanahan was asked about it today, and he said, well, we don't know anything about that, but, certainly it would be a big issue if it was, but I don't watch viral posts on Twitter, so he's pretty funny guy with that. But anyways, Bo, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Link is in the description for the YouTube channel. Bo is with Phoenix Sports Network. He's on the beat with the Arizona Cardinals. He is in the locker room around these players on a regular basis. So I really enjoy that you were able to come on. You guys are doing some really cool things over there at Phoenix Sports. So make sure you go check them out, give them a subscribe. And I always say this, 2 things real quick. First of all, I know that everybody in this chat hates the Arizona Cardinals. So if the 49ers win, take the opportunity, go sub and then talk a little trash, or go lick your wounds. If they lose, be fair both ways, but give them some love no matter what. And I'll ask you this. Well, we're going to play again. Would you mind doing this again in a few weeks when they play again?
Sure. Well, let's do it.
All right, man. I appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. Have a blessed night, and I'll be back in a few days. Peace.